On a lonely road at dusk, a small girl sat on the cold ground, clutching a worn teddy bear to her chest. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, her tiny shoulders trembling in the fading light. A single father pulled his truck to the side of the road, his heart pounding as he knelt beside her. When she finally spoke, her words cut through the silence like a blade. "My daddy doesn't want me anymore." In that moment, everything changed. What began as a chance encounter on an empty street became a story of compassion, courage, and the fragile hope of belonging. Sometimes, the most powerful stories are not about heroes in capes, but about ordinary people choosing to stay, to listen, and to love when it matters most. Stay with us and subscribe to Hidden Echo Stories, because this is just the beginning. The October sky had already begun to sink into shades of violet and gray, the kind of evening where the air carried both silence and secrets. Caleb Foster's hands rested tight on the steering wheel of his old work truck, his mind dulled by the repetition of another long day. The heater rattled, struggling against the Idaho chill, and beside him sat his daughter Tessa, curled into her hoodie with her knees drawn up. She did not complain, but the heaviness in her quietness mirrored his own. They had shared too many evenings like this lately, nights where the only thing between them and the dark was the low hum of tires and the occasional sigh. Caleb often wondered if the weight in his chest was his alone, or if Tessa was beginning to carry pieces of it too. Out of the stillness came her voice, soft and unsure. "Dad, do you think things ever really get better, or do adults just learn to fake it?" The question lingered, filling the cab in a way that even music could not. Caleb gave her a small smile, though it faltered at the edges. "Maybe a little of both," he said, but the words tasted hollow. She nodded and turned back to the window, and silence returned as if nothing had been said at all. Just then something unusual flickered in the periphery of his headlights. At first it looked like debris, maybe a forgotten bag or a cluster of wildflowers clinging to the roadside. But as the truck drew closer, a blot of pink stood out, too still, too human. A jolt of instinct struck Caleb like cold lightning, sending a shiver up his spine. He pulled the truck over, hazard lights blinking in the dusk. Tessa sat up straight, her eyes wide. Neither spoke as Caleb cut the engine. She quietly reached into the back seat, pulling the old blanket they kept for long rides, setting it carefully across the seat beside her. A travel mug of lukewarm cocoa was placed in the cup holder, her hands trembling just slightly as though she knew what was coming would matter. Caleb gave her a grateful nod before stepping out into the crisp evening. Crunching gravel under his boots, Caleb approached slowly. There at the edge of the shoulder sat a girl no older than 6 or 7. Her blonde hair was tangled, her cheeks stained with old tears. In her arms was a teddy bear worn thin, its ear hanging by a few stitches, a faded purple bow still tied stubbornly around its neck. She clutched it with a fierceness that made Caleb hesitate. Dropping to one knee a few feet away, he softened his voice. "Hey there, are you okay?" For a long moment she did not respond. Her eyes flickered, but she would not look at him. Caleb tried again, this time gentler. "Do you need help? My name is Caleb. My daughter is right over there in the truck." He nodded toward Tessa, who sat watching with cautious concern. Finally the girl whispered, so low he almost missed it. "If you are not going to take me, let me cry here. This spot is mine." The words landed heavy, too heavy for someone so small. Caleb felt something twist deep inside him, a recognition of pain he could not yet name. He stayed low, his hands open and unthreatening. "You can stay if you want, but maybe you would like some water, or to sit in the warm truck for a little while. The door can stay open. You are in control." He offered choices instead of commands, sensing how fragile trust might be. The girl studied him, silent and unreadable, before glancing at Tessa. It was as though she was searching for danger or for a reason to believe. From the truck, Tessa stepped out, blanket in her arms, and held it where the girl could see. She did not speak, only gave a shy but steady smile, patting the seat beside her. That seemed to matter. The girl stood, shaky but determined, still gripping her teddy. She hesitated halfway, watching Caleb carefully, only moving closer when he stepped aside to give her space. Before climbing in, she pulled a thermos lid from her backpack, poured a few drops of water into it, and held it to her teddy's mouth first. Only after the bear had its pretend sip did she climb into the back seat. Caleb swallowed hard at the ritual, understanding that sometimes survival was stitched together with small acts of make-believe. He picked up her small pink backpack and an old suitcase lying near the grass, checking quickly for injuries or anything suspicious. Nothing obvious, only the weight of a child carrying more than she should. Sliding back behind the wheel, he exchanged a look with Tessa. Her eyes were wide but steady, a silent agreement passing between them. The drive home was quiet, filled with unspoken questions neither dared to voice. Inside their modest house at the edge of town, warmth seemed to unsettle the girl more than the chill outside. She hovered in the entryway, scanning every corner and every exit, clutching the teddy like a lifeline. Caleb moved gently, showing her each room one by one, leaving doors open, placing water on the nightstand by the bed. He sat outside her door that night, his back to the wall, listening to the fragile rhythm of her breath. He did not make promises he could not keep. He simply stayed. The night was long, but for the first time in days, Caleb felt a hush that did not feel empty. Somewhere in the quiet, a seed of connection had been planted. He did not know yet who this girl was or why she sat alone on the roadside, but he knew with certainty that his life and Tessa had just changed. The next morning sunlight crept through the blinds, casting thin stripes of gold across the kitchen table. Caleb poured cereal into 3 bowls, his hands moving almost automatically. Tessa yawned and slid into her usual seat, but her eyes never left the girl who now sat cautiously at the other end. Maya, he had learned after a halting exchange the night before, handled her spoon as though she had to remind herself how to eat. The teddy sat in her lap, watching over every bite. The house was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that held a question mark. Caleb crouched beside her chair, speaking in a voice that matched the hush. "We are going to see a doctor today, just to make sure you are all right. No needles. I promise, you can say no to anything that scares you." She nodded once, her thumb rubbing the teddy's worn ear. When they arrived at the clinic, Maya froze at the threshold, counting the squares of sidewalk in a whisper. Caleb kept his distance but stayed in her line of sight, his hands open at his sides. Inside, the smell of antiseptic stirred his own nerves. Dr. Keller, a small woman with gentle eyes, welcomed Maya as if she had been waiting just for her. She allowed Maya to keep the teddy on her lap during the exam, speaking about gardens and weather instead of sharp instruments. Even so, when the nurse tried to take her blood pressure, Maya's hand shot out, gripping Caleb's sleeve with such force he thought she might tear the fabric. He stayed still, anchoring her with nothing more than presence. Dr. Keller found no fresh injuries, only signs of hunger and old bruises. "Nothing suspicious," she said softly, but her eyes flickered with concern. Maya refused to answer most questions, her lips pressed tightly, her gaze fixed on the floor. Caleb felt the weight of anger in his chest, an anger with no place to go. A police officer arrived next, Officer Pike, broad-shouldered but calm. He crouched low to Maya's level and spoke as though she was the only person in the room. He asked if she knew where she had been before, if she had been with her mother or father. Maya buried her face in her teddy, shaking her head. Pike noted everything, his voice steady, his presence gentle. Then came the words that would not leave Caleb's mind. No missing child report matched her. No one had come searching. Odd, Pike called it. Odd that a child could disappear and the world stayed silent. That night, the word echoed in Caleb's head like a cruel refrain. Odd that she could sit by a road, invisible, forgotten. But it was not long before the silence cracked. News spread. A missing child alert appeared on television. Maya Brooks, 6 years old. Her father, Jason Brooks, stood trembling before cameras, holding her photograph like it was the last piece of himself. His plea was raw, desperate. "Maya, if you are watching, Daddy loves you. I am coming for you, I promise." In the living room, Maya's body stiffened. Her breath came ragged as her eyes locked on the screen. She gripped Caleb's sleeve, her knuckles white. Caleb wanted to destroy the television to shield her from both the pain and the truth, but he knew she had to see. She whispered once, voice cracking. He said he did not want me. The lie sat between them like a ghost. Caleb swallowed hard and whispered back, "That is not true. Sometimes people say things that are not real. You did nothing wrong." She did not answer, but her fingers did not release his arm. From that moment, the path ahead grew both clearer and heavier. Avery, the caseworker, explained the next steps with calm authority. There would be paperwork, interviews, and eventually a reunion. Maya needed stability until then. "Routine is your friend," Avery repeated. So Caleb built rituals: hot cocoa with marshmallows, evening cartoons with the sound turned low, a spider plant watered together, one slow count at a time. Still, trust was fragile. More than once Caleb found Maya dragging her suitcase to the door, whispering, "Just in case." He crouched and promised softly, "You can keep it where you want, but if it moves in the night, I will know." Deal. It was not a command, only a bridge. In the evenings, Tessa found small ways to reach her, sharing crayons at the kitchen table, sliding stickers toward her, offering a blanket without asking questions. Slowly, Maya began to respond. A moon sticker pressed to the teddy's head, a tiny smile at a cartoon duck. These were not victories to shout about, but they were seeds of healing. When bedtime came, the fear returned. She refused to remove her hoodie, pulling the hood over her head like armor. Caleb lay outside her door in a sleeping bag, cheek against the floorboards. When she whispered into the dark, "Are you still there?" his answer came steady as stone. "Yes, kiddo, I am right here." Days blurred into careful patterns, each moment an exercise in patience. Caleb balanced work calls with case updates, while Tessa continued to be the quiet anchor Maya leaned toward. Avery checked in by phone every evening, her voice calm and practical. She praised the progress, reminding Caleb that consistency was a kind of love. And then almost suddenly the day arrived. Jason Brooks drove from Spokane, his voice raw from pleading with police, his body shaking with the weight of absence. The family room at the precinct was small, filled with mismatched chairs, a coloring book, and paper cups of cocoa. Caleb stood by the door, his pulse racing, while Maya sat on the rug, her teddy in her arms. The door burst open. Jason stumbled in, his voice breaking on her name. For one suspended moment, the world held its breath. Then Maya ran, colliding with her father's chest in a silence so loud it swallowed everything else. Jason dropped to his knees, clutching her as though he could never let go again. Tears carved lines down his face. "Never, never," he whispered. "You are my always." Caleb and Tessa stepped back, their hands finding each other. They watched in awe and relief as a family stitched itself back together in sobs and whispers. It was not their story to own, but it was their choice to be the bridge. Life after the reunion did not simply snap back to normal. Instead, it unfolded like cautious steps across a bridge that had only just been built. For Maya, safety was not something that arrived all at once. It came piece by piece, through rituals, through repeated proof that her place in the world was no longer fragile. Jason Brooks altered his life in ways both small and profound. He shifted his UPS delivery route so that he was always home before the school bell rang, waiting at the curb no matter the weather. Maya counted the squares of sidewalk on their walk back, her small hand anchored in his. She wore the Purple Star hoodie almost every day, its fabric softening with time, its color a quiet banner of belonging. Around her wrist, the friendship bracelet that Tessa had made for her became a tether, a signal that she was still connected to more than one home. Dr. Keller made introductions to a child psychologist in Spokane, and Jason embraced the routines of therapy with an almost desperate determination. At first, Maya barely spoke in the sessions. She would sit with her teddy in her lap, pressing stickers into his patched paw, letting the crayon lines in her sketchbook say what her voice could not. Jason sat with her through each appointment, learning to watch for the signs, the small flinches, the sudden silences. The therapist taught him that healing was not about erasing the past, but about proving day after day that someone would stay. Friday afternoons became their new ritual. Library visits and a stop at the bakery down the street. Maya chose 2 books, one to read before bed, one for the kitchen table, and sometimes a bookmark for her teddy instead of another toy. Mrs. Alvarez, who had been there in Boise, often joined them either in person or through video calls. It was in these ordinary moments between shelves of books and the smell of pastries that Maya's laughter began to return. At first it was soft, unsure, but with time it rose clearer, brighter, like a bird testing its wings. Tessa became a constant presence too. Video calls stretched into long conversations about school, favorite cartoons, and drawings of the moon from 2 different cities. Sometimes the girls sat in silence, coloring together from afar, holding up their pages to compare. Caleb often lingered in the doorway, heart swelling at the sight of this quiet bond that seemed to mend places even adults could not reach. Maya drew bridges often, connecting houses, stretching across rivers with her teddy standing proudly at the center. She would tap the page twice, her smile shy but real, before waving goodnight. But the road was not without shadows. Valerie, Maya's estranged mother, attempted to reach her once through a relative. The incident was documented and taken seriously by both CPS and the courts. Jason, shaken but unwavering, stayed focused on what mattered most. He attended parenting classes, kept a nightly journal, and filled it with small victories and failures alike. Today she laughed at breakfast, one entry read. Today she cried at bedtime but stayed when I held her hand. These were not grand accomplishments, but they were evidence of progress. The court hearings came and went with their own gravity. Jason sat through each one, surrounded by files and professionals, while Maya stayed in the corner with crayons, her drawings now including brighter colors, fuller houses, figures with hands that did not let go. The judge's final decision granted Jason permanent guardianship, barring Valerie from contact until serious changes were made. More importantly, it gave Maya the certainty she needed. She would not be moved again. Her first birthday celebration after the reunion arrived in the early spring. The Brooks house filled with balloons and laughter, the smell of chocolate cake thick in the air. Tessa and Caleb drove in from Boise, carrying a shoebox wrapped in gold paper. Mrs. Alvarez brought cinnamon rolls and daffodils, filling the kitchen with warmth. Maya wore her purple hoodie and a paper crown, flitting between guests, laughter chasing her every step. Under the craft table, she and Tessa pressed stickers onto the teddy's patched paw, giggling as if no shadows had ever touched them. The high point of the party was not the cake, though it was layered and glittered with sprinkles. It was the moment Caleb presented the gold box. Inside lay a small sewing kit. Tessa explained with bright eyes, "So we can fix Mr. Pickles together." The teddy's torn ear was stitched unevenly that afternoon, with Jason guiding Maya's small hands, Tessa choosing the button and Caleb threading the needle. It was not perfect, but when Maya hugged the bear to her chest, her smile said it was beautiful. That night she gave Tessa her friendship bracelet back, asking her to keep it until summer as a promise of more days together. The house quieted as guests left, but Maya's laughter lingered in the walls. Later, before bed, she sat at the dining table with Jason, tracing the new stitches on her teddy as though they were proof not only of repair, but of permanence. She video-called Caleb and Tessa one more time, retelling the balloon scare and arguing over whether cake was better for breakfast or lunch. Her eyes sparkled, her voice stronger than it had ever been. As the call ended and Jason tucked her into bed, Maya whispered with drowsy certainty, "We are really a family now, right?" Jason kissed her forehead. "We always were. Now you know it." Her eyes closed, her breathing steady, her teddy safe beside her. Outside, the spring rain tapped softly against the windows, washing the world clean. Inside, Maya slept soundly, wrapped not only in blankets but in the truth she had once doubted. She was wanted. She was home. And the bridge that had carried her here would never vanish beneath her feet. Some stories end quietly, without fireworks or headlines, but leave behind a light that continues to glow long after the final page is turned. Maya's journey was never about sudden miracles. It was about patience, about the kind of love that shows up every single day even when the nights feel long and uncertain. A single father and his daughter stopped on a lonely road, and in that decision, a little girl's life shifted from despair to hope. That is what makes stories like this unforgettable. The truth is, healing rarely looks like a perfect picture. It looks like uneven stitches on a teddy bear, a friendship bracelet exchanged in shy hands, or a father kneeling on a cold floor to whisper, "I am right here." It looks like hot cocoa with too many marshmallows, crayons scattered across a kitchen table, or counting sidewalk squares on the way home. It looks like ordinary people choosing compassion over convenience. Maya's life will still have challenges. Trust takes time and scars do not vanish overnight. But what she carries now is more powerful than fear. She carries proof that she is wanted, that she belongs, and that love does not leave when it becomes inconvenient. She carries the knowledge that people can choose to stay, even when the world has told you otherwise. Stories like Maya's remind us that family is not always about blood, but about presence, about the quiet courage to stand beside someone in their darkest moment. They remind us that the simplest gestures can change a life, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is just not walk away. Here at Hidden Echo Stories, we believe in keeping these echoes alive. We believe in the power of love, resilience, and second chances. Every story we share is a reminder that even in the quietest corners of the world, kindness still exists, and hope still waits to be found. If this story touched your heart, if it made you remember the importance of choosing compassion, then we invite you to stay with us. There are more stories waiting, stories of strength, of forgiveness, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply by refusing to give up on one another. Subscribe to Hidden Echo Stories today, and let us walk together through tales that heal, inspire, and remind us that no one is ever truly alone when love is given the chance to stay.